Two boys disappeared 5 years apart and were found alive behind the same door. What solved one case unexpectedly ended another. Shawn Hornbeck and Ben Ownby. Two missing boys, one door. In 2002, 11-year-old Shawn Hornbeck vanished in Missouri, leaving behind questions that slowly faded into silence. For years, his case remained open but unresolved, one of many missing children stories that seemed to stall with time. Then, in 2007, another boy disappeared. 13-year-old Ben Ownby was taken while walking home from school, triggering an immediate and urgent search. What investigators did not know was that this second disappearance was moving toward a discovery no one anticipated. Two cases, separated by years, were about to collide. And what followed would challenge how we think about missing children and where they might actually be. In October 2002, 11-year-old Shawn Hornbeck lived in Richwoods, Missouri, a small community where routines felt safe and familiar. Children rode their bikes, neighbors recognized one another, and nothing about that afternoon suggested danger. Shawn left home on his bicycle, staying close to the area he knew. It was an ordinary moment, the kind that never feels like the beginning of a story until it suddenly is. When Shawn failed to return, concern quickly spread through his family. Within hours, police were notified and search efforts began. Volunteers joined law enforcement, walking roads, checking wooded areas, and calling out Shawn's name as daylight faded. Flyers were printed and posted throughout the town. Local news stations shared his photo, repeating the same message. An 11-year-old boy was missing, and someone out there might have seen him. In the early days, there's confidence that the case would be resolved. Children did not simply vanish from places like Richwoods, not without someone noticing something. But as time passed, the investigation struggled to find direction. There were no confirmed witnesses, no clear vehicle description, and no reliable sightings. Each passing week pushed the case further from urgency and closer to uncertainty. As months turned into years, Shawn's disappearance slowly moved from headlines to archives. His name remained on missing persons lists, but public attention faded. This was not unusual. Across the country, long-term missing child cases often followed the same pattern: intense focus at the beginning, followed by silence when answers failed to appear. What no one realized was that Shawn's story was not ending in darkness or distance. It was continuing nearby, unfolding in a way that challenged every assumption about what it means for a child to be missing. 5 years later, in January 2007, Missouri would face another disappearance. This time, the response would be faster, louder, and more urgent. And without anyone realizing it, the second case was already moving toward the first, toward a moment that would force investigators to confront how a child could be gone for years, yet never truly out of sight. After Shawn Hornbeck was abducted in 2002, investigators assumed he had been taken far away. That assumption shaped the search. Efforts focused on highways, distant sightings, and the possibility that Shawn was no longer anywhere near the place he disappeared. What no one considered seriously enough was the opposite, that he might still be close, living in plain view. In reality, Shawn was not hidden in isolation. He was living alongside the man who had taken him, moving through everyday environments that rarely trigger suspicion. Over the years, Shawn attended school, interacted with teachers and classmates, and appeared in public spaces where adults saw him regularly. To the outside world, he looked like a child living with his father. The man with him presented himself calmly, answered questions when they were asked, and offered no obvious reason for concern. This illusion of normalcy was powerful. In many communities, adults hesitate to question what looks like a conventional family structure. That hesitation worked in the abductor's favor. Shawn's appearance changed as he grew older, making it even harder to connect him to the face printed on missing posters years earlier. The longer time passed, the less likely recognition became. For Shawn, speaking out was not a simple choice. Silence became a form of self-preservation. Drawing attention risked consequences he understood and feared. Remaining quiet allowed him to survive day by day, even as the world continued searching for a younger version of him. The system designed to find missing children was still active, but it was searching for someone frozen in time while Shawn was growing up right in front of it. 5 years later, another boy disappeared. This time, the search would move fast. On January 8, 2007, 13-year-old Ben Ownby was walking home from school in Beaufort, Missouri. It was a routine walk, one that ended the same way most days did. But somewhere along that familiar path, Ben was taken. When he didn't arrive home, his absence was noticed quickly. His family contacted the police almost immediately, and the case was treated as urgent from the start. Law enforcement responded with speed and intensity. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, spoke with witnesses, and asked residents to remain alert. Unlike cases that grow cold over time, this investigation was aggressive from the beginning. Every detail mattered. Every observation was recorded. The community itself became part of the search, paying closer attention to unfamiliar faces and unusual behavior. That attention produced something critical. A witness reported seeing a suspicious vehicle near the area where Ben was last seen. It was not a dramatic clue, but it was specific enough to act on. Investigators followed the lead, narrowing their focus and tracing the information back to a particular address. Within days, the search was no longer abstract. It had direction and momentum. What no one understood yet was the full weight of what this investigation was about to uncover. The effort to find one missing boy was quietly moving toward another child who had been gone for years, a name most people no longer expected to hear again. The information provided by the witness led investigators to a specific home. When officers arrived, they were focused on finding Ben Ownby. They expected a single rescue, or at the very least, clear answers. What they encountered instead was something far more complex. Inside the house, police found Ben. He was alive. But as the situation unfolded, it became clear that Ben was not the only child there. Another boy was present, older, quiet, and unfamiliar to the officers on scene. At first, his presence raised questions but no immediate alarms. He did not match the active missing child alerts tied to Ben's case. That changed when officers began asking routine questions. The boy gave his name. When it was checked against national databases, the results stopped the investigation in its tracks. The second child was Shawn Hornbeck, missing since 2002. A case that had been silent for more than 4 years was suddenly active again, not because of a breakthrough in forensic work or a reopened tip line, but because of a single, unrelated disappearance. In that moment, 2 timelines collapsed into one. The search for Ben Ownby had not only led police to a suspect, but had solved a case many believed might never be resolved. One address, one door, and two names, each tied to a different year, a different family, and the same unseen reality. The rescue of Shawn Hornbeck and Ben Ownby was widely described as extraordinary, even miraculous. But once the initial shock faded, the case left behind questions that were harder to answer. How could a child be missing for more than 4 years and still live among other people? How could schools, neighbors, and systems built to protect children fail to recognize what was happening in front of them? The answer was not a single mistake, but a pattern. Shawn's case revealed how easily long-term disappearances can slip into silence, especially when there are no new leads to sustain attention. It also showed how powerful appearances can be. A calm adult, a child who followed instructions, and a situation that looked familiar were often enough to stop further questioning. Normalcy became a disguise. This case stands apart not because 2 boys were taken, but because one disappearance exposed another. Ben Ownby's case moved quickly, driven by urgency and public attention. Shawn's had slowed with time. Together, they demonstrated how fragile the line is between being searched for and being forgotten. The outcome was rare, but the vulnerabilities it exposed were not. And that is what gives this story its lasting weight. The rescue of Shawn Hornbeck and Ben Ownby was rare. 2 missing children, connected by chance, found alive behind the same door. But what makes this case endure is not the coincidence. It is what the coincidence revealed. Shawn was not hidden in darkness, he was hidden in normal life. Ben was found quickly because attention was sharp, time mattered, and people acted. Together, their stories show how easily a case can fade and how much depends on vigilance, timing, and the willingness to question what looks ordinary. This was not just the end of 2 disappearances. It was a reminder that missing children are not always far away, and that sometimes the difference between being lost and being found is a single moment of attention. The rescue of Shawn Hornbeck and Ben Ownby was extraordinary, but not because it relied on luck alone. It exposed how quickly urgency fades when time passes, and how dangerous normal appearances can be. Shawn was not hidden in darkness, he was hidden in plain sight. Ben was found because attention was sharp, time mattered, and someone spoke up. Together, their stories reveal how fragile the line is between being searched for and being forgotten. This case did not just end 2 disappearances. It left behind a warning about how easily we stop looking. Next on True Echoes. This case showed how timing, attention, and investigation can change everything. But what happens when killers remain hidden for years, or when justice itself becomes a question? In our next series, we turn to catching killers. From a serial murderer operating across the American Midwest, to a subway shooting that divided a city and sparked a national debate, we'll examine cases where investigators made critical mistakes, pressure mounted, and time worked against the truth. Each episode focuses on a different case and a different failure point. If you're ready, we're about to begin. The truth coming soon on True Echoes. Shawn Hornbeck and Ben Ownby were found alive, but their rescue exposed years of silence missed questions, and dangerous assumptions. One boy was searched for until time ran out. The other was found because someone paid attention. Together, their story reminds us that missing children are not always far away. Sometimes they are closer than anyone dares to imagine. Stories don't always end when someone is found. Sometimes, that's where the real questions begin. Subscribe and step into the echoes of truth. To be continued.